Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome to tonight's Joe Chaffee Weather Show, Sunday, the 6th of October, 2019. And we are, of course, having to deal with the fact that the Giants and the Jets both lost. So, what are you going to do? No matter. We had some changes today, of course, with the cool air that came in on Friday and Saturday, just pulled right out last night. Winds went around to the south, clouds came in, temperatures warmed up, and that shot us back up to the 70-degree mark. I'm just gonna turn a little bit because I'm a little bit. There you go. It's a little better with the light. A little bit on the hot side with the lighting here. I lost one of the light bulbs, so I gotta fix that. But we've got some things going on this week. We have a potential for a coastal low that is going to be running offshore and the complications that are going to come with that. We also are going to see another round of snow, and in some places it will be a sizable snowfall in parts of the Northern Rockies into the northern plains. And this is all part of the Lorenzo-driven pattern change that we saw begin when Lorenzo went into Europe. And now, of course, we're seeing all the downstream effects. And it looks to me like this pattern is going to be holding on for a while at least certainly through the next couple of weeks, and probably even a bit beyond that. Whether it holds on in the long term going into November or December, that remains to be seen. But at least for now, we are seeing a pattern where we're not going to get these big ridges locking up in the eastern part of the United States and producing 90-degree plus days for days and weeks on end. So that's done with. And the other thing is that we are going to, of course, continue to see weather systems move along. It's a progressive pattern. Things are moving from west to east with a certain amount of regularity. And Canada has opened up, so we're getting air masses coming down from the north as well. So this is going to lead to some rather interesting consequences down the road in all different forms, be it rain or snow, and depending, of course, on where you are. So let's get started tonight. I'm hoping that you guys can all hear me okay. Everything seems fine. So we'll start tonight. We're going to look at the current conditions that we have, and the dew points are up. The temperatures are up as well. These are current temperatures that you're seeing here on the plot. And we're back up. We got up to 70 degrees today, as I said, in a few places a little bit higher. And now tonight, temperatures aren't really going to be going much of anywhere. With those dew points now back up above 60 in most places, that's going to hold the temperatures up. And as we examine the readings further south, same idea as we get down into Maryland and Virginia, and down into North Carolina, we've got temperatures that are generally in the 60s to low 70s. And if we take the map in the other direction, we'll move on up to upstate New York, where we saw 20s and 30s for overnight lows. Well, we're seeing these numbers going up too. They're all back up into the 60s. All of this ahead of a cold front that is pushing eastward. Here's some temperatures up for Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, pushing up through the 50s. Takes a little longer for the warmer air to get up there, but even here, you're going to see the temperatures rise up before they fall again. And we're going to get some rain, which is a good thing. This front is going to be somewhat productive, especially away from the coast. One of the things that happens is as it approaches the coast, we're going to see that front weaken a bit, so the rainfall amounts get cut down considerably. It also will be raining for less time, and as a result, those amounts at the coast are generally a quarter to a half an inch, and in some cases even less. But once you get into northwest Jersey through the Hudson Valley and then go north and west of there, you're looking at rainfall amounts on the order of up to an inch, inch and a half, and that extends up through much of upstate New York and on up into New England, which is a good thing. Rain is needed, and we really could use some rainfall down in the south, and there is a gap. You've got the same action happening where the front is going to weaken as it moves eastward, so you can see the amounts really tail off as you head down into the Delmarva Peninsula, to Delaware, It's almost non-existent in this one stripe, and then they pick up again. Now, the numbers you're seeing in coastal North Carolina that and down into South Carolina, really relatively minimal numbers here. But we are that's from the coastal low. I'll just make it a little bit wider so you can take a look at the bigger picture here, just how the rain is lining up in terms of amounts. So it's from northern Mississippi northeastward on up into the interior parts of the Northeast that are going to get a good soaking, and everybody else on either side is going to deal with whatever they deal with. And again, this by the way this map is through 2 a.m. Tuesday, so we don't have on here what might happen in some coastal areas for the latter part of this week with the developing coastal low. And the satellite tonight, I just want to check back 1 second with you guys. I'm assuming you can all hear me pretty well. I did some audio adjusting, so hopefully you're hearing me well, and I see no complaints of sound, so that's a good thing. So we're in good shape here. Okay, so let me come back. Hang on 1 second. So let's roll it along here, and let's head to the satellite loop tonight. We've got clouds in New England all the way down through the mid-Atlantic states, that warmer air coming up the eastern seaboard. And also take a look off the southeast coast of the United States. You actually can see a little bit of turning here. There's already some kind of weak low, perhaps at mid-levels, and a little bit of a burst of convection that's going on north of that low. There's nothing here that's pending to become a tropical depression or a tropical storm, but there is going to be a low that's going to form out here off the southeast coast. And I wouldn't be at all surprised over the course of the next several days, but particularly from the middle part of the week on, when this low gets going and moves up east of North Carolina and starts pushing northeastward from there, that we could wind up seeing this get at least some subtropical characteristics. Remember, the water temperatures just offshore are still pretty warm, and certainly warm enough to support something that might be at least partially tropical. I don't think it really changes the outcome too much in terms of what the actual weather that's going to occur for coastal areas. I think that's going to pretty much be, that will be what it will be. It would be the same if it were non-tropical. Maybe you get a little bit more rain out of it if you play your cards right. But certainly something that we're going to keep our eyes on in the coming days. Speaking of the rain, some showers have already kind of run ahead in parts of New England and through New York and Pennsylvania. They're widely scattered. Not all of them are reaching the ground, but you can also see the more vigorous area of showers and even some thunderstorms back through Ohio, southern Indiana, Kentucky, southeastern Missouri, western Tennessee. So this is all part of that frontal boundary that is moving along to the east. And on the wider picture, it is absolutely dead quiet once you go west into the plains, and throughout all of the west is hardly an echo to be found. Seeing a little bit of scattered shower activity coming in off the Florida coast. The easterly flow with the high where it is pushing in a little bit of moisture, so you're getting some scattered showers in that particular area. So let's take a look at where things are headed over the next several days. And of course, the first thing is that we've got the weather front that is approaching, and it's just right about there. There is some cooler air that's coming down behind it. You've got this warm air moving up the eastern seaboard around the high that's east of Cape Cod. And then you've got this area down in here that is what eventually we're going to get a bit of a low center to develop on. So moving forward for tomorrow, that front nears the coast. Now, it's going to weaken as it approaches the coast because all the action really starts to shift off the southeast coast of the U.S. So right in there, looks like some kind of little surface low develops. And the question is, how much lift are you going to get here? It's got to move up. It's going to try and move up to the north, up the east coast in some fashion. I think it's going to do something like this. Might mill around a little bit for a day or two when it's east of Virginia. So that'll probably play a role in all of this. And by the way, while all of this is happening, you'll notice that back up here through the northern plains, you've got, the northernmost Rockies into southwestern Canada, you've got the next shortwave trough that is dropping southeastward. And that's going to play a role in what's going to happen with this system along the East Coast. Now, I'm going to use the GFS here. This is the late afternoon run of the GFS. The low along the coast moves northeast and northward. The GFS has been the most aggressive and furthest west. But let me just point out a couple of things off the bat. First off, the impact in the southeast is only right along the immediate coast with some rain. In the north, I should be back. I hope to God that that was a one-time hit here tonight. I haven't had that happen here at home in a long time, so I'm really I'm hoping that that's it. My apologies. So let me just back up again to what I was saying. The low off the East Coast is going to ultimately, the rain areas are going to be confined to the coastal areas, and I drew in the blue lines. And you also have the area that's up in the northern plains. That's the next storm system right in here in northern Colorado that will be bringing some significant snows to the northern plain, the northern Rockies and the northern plains. And that shortwave trough is pretty strong, and it's going to impact the shortwave trough in the east that's driving this coastal low. You'll notice, by the way, too, that the gradient does get a bit tight east of Virginia, south of Long Island, and south of southernmost New England on Wednesday night into early Thursday. So that's something that might mean gales or fringe gales touching along the immediate coast. With respect to coastal flooding, just want to point out that we are going into a low tide cycle here with the first quarter moon, and that is going to help matters. It'll keep tides from getting too unreasonable. And then we have the full moon, but that's not until next Monday. So that at least from the stand, if we're looking at several days of an onshore wind, either around the high or around the low, at least it's coming where the moon cycle is going to behave itself. So as we move forward here, let me just get rid of the lines I drew. So there's your plains storm, and that's actually lifting up northward toward Minnesota and into the western lakes. And the GFS is actually producing a fair amount of snow out of this in parts of South and North Dakota and into Nebraska and even down into Colorado. I don't know if Ruthless Goat is watching tonight, but if he is, you might be getting a little excited about this because you do have snow being indicated there. But meanwhile, the coastal low, you see how it just kind of hangs here for an extra day or two on Thursday, and it keeps bringing rain back into coastal southeastern and southern New England to about New York City before it finally starts to move away toward the northeast. Given that it's offshore the way it is, the ocean water temperatures out here are much warmer. They're still well up into the 70s and even lower 80s. So the possibility that this could get subtropical characteristics, I think, is certainly there. And again, it might not make too much of a difference in terms of the actual weather that occurs on the coast, but it might enhance the rain a little bit in some of the coastal areas. But I don't see anything really getting much beyond that. The high to the north holds, and that tightens the gradient. And then finally, you get the low to pull out to the northeast as the plains system, which now is past its peak intensity, begins to lift up. That gets down to about a 979 pressure here. I mean, that's a pretty wound up low that we get for this time of the year. And after that goes by, it looks like the weather's going to calm down a little bit. We get drier into next week, and then we start that parade of weather fronts that comes on through. The GFS keeps trying to make something in the Caribbean. Whether that happens or not remains to be seen. Whether it moves northward or it may just move straight westward, that's a long-range problem that I'm not really going to get too wrapped up in. But we do have a rather chilly look here at some point in the longer range. So the overall flavor of things is for temperatures to average near or perhaps below normal much of the time, with the occasional day or two where you warm up to be above normal ahead of the next cold front. It's just a very seasonal look to the overall pattern. So let's take a look at the upper air tonight and see what clues it can give us. There are still a couple of things with regards to the coastal low in the east that are going to be that we're still hanging on with regards to figuring out who's going to get what, or whether this whole thing, does it wind up getting suppressed. I think the European, with its slightly more suppressed look to it, is probably not going to be the way it comes out. I'm basing that on the fact that the trough that's out in the west is strong. It should be. The models are handling it differently, and I think the European might be too over-aggressive with it, and as a result, it's not really handling the system in the east as well as it should. But going through this weekend, of course, when we saw that the trough off the east coast pull out, and of course we're warming up. Now you can see here's the next short wave that comes through for Monday, and the jet stream drops down a bit. Big difference, by the way. Now you notice the westerly winds in the upper atmosphere go all the way down. They really do extend pretty far south, down into Florida and down into the Gulf states. So the heat ridge is just not there, and that's a big plus. Now here comes that deep trough that swings into the west, but at the same time you're seeing this short wave here and upper low that is sitting up in southern New England. This is for Thursday. This trough is actually going to help lift this, eventually kick this out to the northeast. I got my arrow drawn a little bit too aggressive here, so let me just see if I can do it by hand. Yeah, that's a little better. So you're going to get your low that's going to move out. So here's your trough out in the west that digs down. You've got this southwest flow going into the western lakes, but part of that jet kind of is separated from that. So if it were not for this upper low, you'd have the ridge probably flying up along the east coast, but that's not going to happen. And instead, you're dealing with this coastal low. You see how the upper low sits off the New Jersey coast late this week. It's waiting for this trough out in the plains to swing around and eventually just kick it away like a giant football there, just kind of kicks it out to the northeast. And then that upper low swings eastward, and you've got a fairly strong jet across the U.S. here early next week. It just goes right across, and the Canadian part of this jet is also pretty active, which again means that we'll be getting some visits from up north over time, and that just continues to swing eastward with a fairly deep trough toward the end of the period. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. Hang on one second. I'm just going to turn that off, which is something I forgot to do. When I do the live streams from work, everything's already preset, so I usually don't have that problem. But I often, most times I forget when I'm at home to shut the phone off and do a few other things that I need to do. But getting back to the weather, the overall pattern to me looks very much like an active October type pattern. Here's the wider view. One of the things, by the way, to look at when you look at these, these jet stream patterns here, the way they're setting up, keep an eye on this area here in the Pacific. The key to getting one of the big things you want to see if you're going to have a trough in the east is you want to have a trough somewhere down along 160 in the vicinity of Hawaii, because that creates, if I was to draw something on average, that creates a flow that looks something like this. So your trough is more in the eastern part of the United States with more of a ridge in the west, and that is a setup in the jet that opens up Canada to bring down cooler air masses over time. There's no guarantee it's going to look anything like this, but this is the way the models seem to be handling it, where there's troughing that wants to be along 160 degrees west, and that favors troughs to come in and be more in the eastern part of the United States over time, as opposed to dropping that trough along the west coast, and then you'd have a ridge that would be out there instead, out on the Pacific side. But we have the exact opposite of this. So the Lorenzo was certainly the driver here with regards to getting rid of that whole upper high scheme, and now we have this pattern to work with. We'll see how long it lasts. Does it go beyond the next 2 to 3 weeks? That's a big question. But at least for now, we seem to be locked into this. One other thing to look for in the longer term that might reinforce this to some degree is the action that's out in the tropical Pacific. Because sometimes if you get, I'm going to use this map here. Let me roll back. Let's roll back to the beginning. There is a typhoon. We have one in moving over Japan, a tropical system. Whether I didn't give it a good look at. I assume that it was a typhoon. It weakens and it moves to the northeast, and eventually it reinforces an upper low that forms in the Gulf of Alaska. Now we have a stronger one in the longer range, okay, and that is this system here, assuming it develops. The GFS has been notorious lately trying to develop these things, and they haven't come to pass. But let's assume that that it does. This one here is going to move up toward Japan and recurve, and then it just reinforces. You see how the recurving typhoons just reinforce a deep trough in the Gulf of Alaska, a deep upper low there, and this feeds into the idea of colder air and troughing in the eastern part of the United States over the long haul. So as far as the long range is concerned, it's a pretty good idea to watch what's happening in the West Pacific to see if you're getting these things to move up to the north and northeast, because they create they can create the chain reactions that are required for troughing in the east. And actually, one of the things that we do need with these troughs in the east is at least an increased potential for some rain because of how dry conditions are in some areas, especially in the southeast, which has been baked for so long these last number of weeks. The Hurricane Center's latest outlook, by the way, they do mention two systems, one in the central Atlantic, in the central subtropical Atlantic, which they rate with a 50% chance of tropical cyclone formation in the next 5 days and 30 in the next 48 hours. Conditions here are favorable, and they do talk about the system off the East Coast, giving it a 30% chance that it could acquire some subtropical characteristics later in the week while it meanders out there. You can get surprised sometimes with those systems that are off the East Coast. If you go back in the past, on occasion they do eventually either acquire subtropical characteristics or even tropical characteristics if they're out there long enough. I'm going to pull up a wide satellite view here. Let's pull out the whole Atlantic. There we go. All right, I don't know why I didn't do that, but let's try it again. Am I like missing something? Oh, yeah, I'm doing the wrong one. Like, why am I pulling up the same picture? There we go. Silly me. So here's the whole tropical Atlantic, the way it looks. And you see the area that's off the southeast coast and northeast of the Bahamas. That's our potential subtropical low. And you are going to see in this band of clouds that sits out in the Atlantic, where you see some of the brighter white cloud tops, probably out of here, you're going to wind up seeing a surface low develop. And that's what the Hurricane Center is talking about. Ultimately, even if that does develop, if you're going to have a wrapped up gale center off the East Coast, it's probably a pretty good chance that the system that develops out here will wind up getting absorbed by the one off the East Coast. So just bear that in mind. Still have a lot of disturbed weather, by the way, in the Northwest Caribbean, into the Gulf of Mexico. Down the road, as this persists, it's been there for about a week or so, in the long range, going out beyond a week, this is where eventually something that the models are trying to do something with. from time to time. They've actually been doing it on and off for the last 2 weeks, except that every day it's pushed back a day later, a day later, a day later, and it never seems to happen. Most of the stuff has been moving off into the Pacific side. Well, this is where the models are still kind of showing where something might develop. So I guess we should keep our eyes on that. There's a wave coming off the African coast, but you're going to have troughing out here in the Atlantic and in the eastern Atlantic. You can see these clouds, by the way, how they're running up from south to north, well east of the Leeward Islands. So there's probably going to be some troughing in the eastern Atlantic, that north of 20 degrees north. So anything that comes out of here is probably going to go northwest and then turn northward relatively quickly. I think we're done with that, the Cape Verde season, the Cape Verde type storms, or the Cabo Verde type storm developments that you might see. All right, 2 other things I want to show you tonight, then I'm going to come back to the chat board. First off, WPC's 7-day forecast showing some pretty heavy rain in southeastern New England around Cape Cod. So they're looking at that coastal low and saying yes. Okay. You also can see the rainfall amounts along the coast and inland are about the same, or maybe a little bit higher inland. So the inland areas are reflecting the front. As I showed you earlier, not going to see too much with regards to the coast with the front, but we do see 1 inch plus amounts hugging the Carolinas, and then spreading a little bit further inland as you go up through New Jersey and into southern New England and on northward. So that's the effect of the coastal precip being thrown backwards. So WPC is seeing this as a possibility. And we do have some relatively ample precip across the middle and upper Mississippi Valley through the western lakes, particularly up into parts of Minnesota and the Dakotas. So here we're talking about that deep low for early next week. And also you're seeing 1 to 2 inch amounts, inch and a half amounts possible up in the northern and central Rockies. And then, of course, you've got some heavy precip up in the northwest. And with respect to snow, this is only through the next 72 hours. I've put here the probability, the 72-hour probability of 4 inches or more of snow. And you can see that the probabilities are pretty high. Anything from blue up to the reds, the blue is the border of 50% chance of 4 or more, and the reds are 95% chance of 4 or more. And that's a fairly large area of 4-inch plus snows that's being indicated for Montana and northern Wyoming. But again, this only takes us through Wednesday evening, 8 p.m. The GFS, we'll go back to that. Let's go back to the GFS. We'll put up, this is a little bit too far to the east. Let's see if I can get a better view here. I'll probably have to use this one so everybody, it's taking halves of both sides. So let's see what the model is showing, and we'll use it with the usual large grain of salt that we like to use these things with. That was a 16-day snowfall total. So here's what we're getting for this week, and the GFS actually going out 7 days is showing a pretty sizable amount of snow there in eastern North Dakota and northwestern Minnesota, but also some fairly decent early season snow amounts on the order of several to 6 inches across the Dakotas and back again through Montana and Wyoming. Some of the areas in Montana are the same areas that just got the snow, so they're getting a second event, and we're seeing snow extending down into Nebraska and eastern Colorado, and also into northwestern Kansas and northwestern Iowa. So odds for an early season snowfall here seem to be going up, and also up into parts of Wisconsin, showing some accumulating snows forecast. And this again is from this first low, which is a pretty wrapped up, this is another deep trough and shortwave that's coming into the west. It's coming in a bit differently, though. It's coming in further east than the one from a week ago. So most of the action is playing out this time. The heaviest action is playing out more in the Dakotas and in western Minnesota, especially if we wind up with as deep a low as the model is indicating here, getting down to a 979 low in in northeastern Minnesota. That's a pretty wrapped up early season snowstorm if it winds up verifying. So I'm going to spend more time this week on both systems in trying to figure out the snow implications from the system out in the west, and of course watching that coastal low and seeing what that does. So I'm going to come back to the chat board really quick here. It's a Sunday evening. I hope everybody had a great weekend. This is probably also a good time for me to remind everybody to make sure they have the updated version of my weather app, the Meteorologist Joe Chaffee app, which you can see right up there, Meteorologist Joe Chaffee, and you can download that for free on Google Play or on the App Store. And when you use it for your local conditions and local forecasts, it will default to your location. You don't have to put it in every time, so that's a big plus. It saves you a step, okay? But I know defaulting to your location is a positive. At least you don't have to do it every single time. The stuff I usually write about is for the area that I cover on a daily basis, which is eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. Although when conditions warrant, I do write about other areas when we've got bigger storms that are playing out in some places. So you can look for those posts. You get notifications and everything else. So a big hello to everybody who's taking some time out of their wonderful Sunday and their wonderful weekend to join us here. I'm going to start tonight with weather and low 78. So now that you've thrown in the towel for southeastern Virginia as far as tropical storms are concerned, you probably should prepare. Just a contrary indicator, and I'm just teasing here. Shelly Man Studios, if this pattern stays like this, which it won't, but just bear that in mind, odds are that it won't, it is possible that the Northeast will start seeing snow clippers in early November. Well, it's not impossible. I mean, this is a cold... I don't want to say it's a... I'm trying to word this correctly. It's a pattern that favors shots of cold air to come down, and yes, if we wait as we get into early November, if this pattern holds, it might offer some early opportunities for inland areas, well inland areas. I'm talking about upstate New York and into New England. I'm just making a general statement here. I can't really, obviously I can't pinpoint something 4 weeks in advance, but if the pattern holds, it would get interesting in other areas as we move into the month of November. Danny Nankumar, do I see any strong ridges coming? Not in the east, not happening in this pattern. When the ridge pops up in the east, you'll notice it's totally different with regards to what we had, which was that locked up, big cut-off upper high that was just sitting there in the southeast. You will get ridges of upper ridges that will develop in between troughs as one pulls out and the next one pulls in. That's only natural that you warm up in between cold fronts, just like we're getting right now. And you'll probably continue to see that. But you're not going to get this locked up heat for long periods of time that we saw across the southern parts of the United States, and particularly the southeast. Tim Smart, do I ever use Facebook? Well, I'm on there every day. As far as lives are concerned, I've shied away from doing live streams on Facebook because I just find that doing it on YouTube works for me a lot better, and I'm enjoying it a lot more. Javon Perry, I don't know. You keep hearing that winter is going to be cold and really snowing in New England. I would just say to you, Javon Perry, that you probably hear that every year, because every year, if you watch the snow forecasts that are put out by various people around the internet, they never say that the winters in the east are going to be warmer than normal. Have you noticed that? They never say that the winters in the east are going to be below normal in terms of snowfall. So you're going to hear that every single year until you move out of the Northeast. Okay, that's just there's no one's going to click on an article that says that the winter's going to be a non-event. Jess Harden, forever looking for snow in Alabama, and right now you're looking for rain in Alabama to break the drought, you'll at least have some opportunities here with this first front coming by. I don't know that it's going to really produce all that much for you, and you're certainly not going to be participating in all the moisture that's going to be building up from the Atlantic low, because that's going to go more up the coast than anything else. And when we look at WPC, as I showed you on the map, as far as rainfall in Alabama over the next 7 days, there's basically a quarter of an inch or less through most of the state, and some parts of the state getting a tenth of an inch or less. So right now, it's not ideal for you. Let's see. Jason Schaefer, the East is too big a population for anyone to forecast a boring season. Bingo! You're correct. You hit it right on the head. You're absolutely correct. Nothing plays better than Armageddon and Apocalypse, and they do it. It's done on a regular basis. Every year is the worst winter. We're facing the worst winter we've ever seen. Every summer we're facing the worst hurricane season we've ever seen. So far, the apocalypse has not played out. One of the things I've always, I learned a long time ago is if you bet on the apocalypse and it happens, you can only be right once. All right, so just bear that in mind. The odds of something extreme happening are very, very long. And if it does wind up being a really cold and snowy winter, well, I would say that it was more a result of a broken clock being right twice a day than something that would have come out as a result of the analysis of the upper air pattern in September, October, or any one of a number of different technical reasons that you could look at with regards to the overall upper air pattern that drove you to make this type of forecast. It's more of a coincidence. Ryan Ford, do you think the cold air will have more of a tough time moderating when it comes down from the north due to the recent snow cover in the northern tier? No, I don't think so. I mean, you're going to get the usual modifications of air masses as they often do. The snow cover up, even in those areas up in Montana, you'd be surprised in those areas this time of year. It's kind of hard to hold that snow cover down. And I would venture to say that they may not have lost all of it. Up in the mountains, of course, they hold on to it. But I don't think it's really going to have any kind of huge impact in terms of impacting temperatures right now. It's just way too early. You get these early storms, when they pull out, temperatures still reflexively try to go back up closer to the averages. And in most of those areas, if you have average temperatures, you're not going to have snow on the ground and snow cover this time of year. So I just in summary, I would just say no. Javon Perry, you love the new theme update of the app version of my app. Thank you. I'm glad to hear it. So there's an endorsement there for the free app, folks. If you don't have it, download it. Let's see. That's where Sandy. Oh, you're talking about something that comes out of the Caribbean, Bill. That's such a. Yeah, that's. We don't need to even. You don't. We can't speculate out on what's out at 2 days 8, 9, 10, and beyond at this point. Just too far, just way too far out. Early snow here where you live. Usually, I live means a pile of snow for you, Johnny Quest. Well, yeah, you're up in the elevations in northwestern Virginia. I got to pay thanks to you, I've been paying closer attention to how things work down there. I mean, I always did to a certain extent, but now I'm a little bit more focused. And it's interesting the microclimates that occur up and down the East Coast in the elevated areas, and how you mentioned the other day in a conversation I saw that your temperature where you are, and I think you said you're over 3,000 feet up. It doesn't really get as hot as it does down in the valleys there, where it'll get into the mid 90s, and you'll be up in around the 80 degree mark, and that would be in the summertime. So I could go for that. Um, let's see. Can a man really make an island? I've heard of an artificial. I have no idea. As you know, that sounds very Amazonish, like on the one of the Amazon or Netflix TV shows. I have no idea on that. Um, let's see. Everybody's already. You guys are you're getting the snow bug. I can feel it and I can taste it. And you guys are thinking already about the months to come. I'm thinking, we're going to get our chances. Reminiscing about Christmas Eve snowstorms, Robert Hurley. Oh, that was the one you're talking about, the one in 15 when we got up. We were in the 70s. Yeah, I don't want that to happen. Let's see. Johnny Quest, Daniel, the mountains ring out the moisture, more rain. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And you guys are talking about super typhoons. Typhoon tip was 874 millibars. That was quite a while ago, typhoon tip. I forgot what year it was back. It was probably back in the, God, when was typhoon tip? 1970s, 1980s, somewhere in there? I don't remember. Let's see. Do I think the low of the eastern U.S. will develop into a subtropical storm? Said Savage Stuff. I think it's possible, but if it does, it may not make too much of a difference in terms of the actual weather that you may wind up seeing. So that is that's kind of how I see it at this point. You're still going to wind up probably with the same outcomes. Maybe it could enhance a little bit of the rainfall along coastal communities if it does. Could mean for a tighter pressure gradient if that's the case. But why don't we just wait and see what comes out over the next couple of days, and we'll take it from there. Timothy Veltman, Trevor McKelvey. You're talking to Trevor. 890. The euro is at 8.99 and 874 on the Mukemet for Hagibis. Well, I didn't even look. Hold on a second. Let's see. Where am I? Here we go. Remember, that's just the model. It's done that before. Well, the GFS has got a 937. 926. So it gets it down to about a 926. So hang on. Oh, by the way, just as a correction from earlier, system moving off Japan moved off on Friday. So that's moved up to the northeast. The Hagibis is the typhoon that the model is really wrapping up into the 920s approaching Japan. On the GFS, on the European, it's, let's see. At least on these maps, so there's 24 hours apart. The lowest I see on this is on the European. It looks like 929. So I don't know if it gets down. Maybe it gets down in between that 24-hour period that I can't see. But on the 24-hour shots at 12Z Sunday, 12Z Monday, 12Z Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So 929, 12Z Thursday. So if it does it, it must do it sometime in between 12Z Wednesday and 12Z Thursday, or 12Z Thursday into 12Z on Friday. Does it rain in Antarctica? Daniel Fitzsimmons. I honestly doubt it, but I could be wrong. Okay. On occasion, I have been known to be. I would imagine if it does, it would be not in the interior. Why is that even coming up? I don't know. AccuWeather long-term wasn't too far off last year, Jason Barry. I don't know what their forecast was long-term. To tell you the truth, except for headlines, I rarely read what other folks are doing with their stuff, particularly in the long range, because it usually is. It's the same thing every year. Category 5 in the West Pacific, totally plausible. Savage Stuff 20. Yeah, why not? They get a lot of them out there. All right, so I think we'll wrap it up tonight. 8:45, a Sunday night live stream. Don't get that. Lately, I've been trying to take a little bit of time to relax on the weekends, but I figured tonight, with what was going on, it was probably a good idea to jump on the live stream, and I'm glad I did. Thanks everybody for being here. Weather in five. I'm sorry. Uh, uh, Toter Drache, too dry to rain. Oh, that's another reason. Yeah, the precip down there, it is dry. Trisha Lou, I haven't seen you in a while. I figured you'd pop up for Western Wisconsin. Well, you know what? After the low moves to the east, if it plays, you play your cards right, maybe you will see your first snow up in northwestern Wisconsin. Now I am going to say goodbye. Oh, Donna Lovesaur, nice to see you on board tonight. Tim Smart, Jay Von Perry, Shelly Man Studios, Johnny Quest, Robert Hurley, Charlie Baker, David Schwartz, and anybody else that I missed. Big thank you again for being here. Weather in 5 tomorrow morning. We'll update you on what the overnight models did and see where we're going with this with regards to the east and a storm off the east coast, and also the system out in the northern plains. And we'll have our regular YouTube live stream tomorrow night at probably 7 o'clock Eastern time. Mike Wheeler, am I still on Pix 11? I'm thinking they just hired a new weekend person that is going to be there full time to do all the fill-ins. So my guess is I probably won't be on there anymore, which is fine by me. In case, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to be, where my regular job is Monday through Friday. Fios One News is going to be shutting down. But that was actually a good thing for me since I was thinking about quitting at the end of the year. So this kind of gave me the push I needed. So I will be all online all the time. So it's just going to be YouTube and my websites and my weather app going forward. And by the way, let me just say a big thank you to everybody for your support. Really appreciate it. Those of you who have joined my Patreon platform, which is my subscription platform, that's just $2 a month. And also for those of you who have shopped on my Amazon link, which is on the descriptor of this live stream or the descriptor of this video if you're watching it on a replay. We're a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates Program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for us to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and affiliated sites. So if you shop on Amazon and you go through my link, Amazon throws me back a little bit of coin, and that makes me quite happy. So I'm glad for those of you. Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate that you like the app. So for those of you who have used my link to shop on Amazon, thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to leave it at that, and we will see you tomorrow, 7 o'clock, on my YouTube channel.